Time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco. Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
We recognize the ability of the roster that's put together right now. And I think we have the ability to do something really special with this group, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning at 6 a.m. and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. I'm Mike Gill. That's Hunter Brody. Andrew DiCecco is in the house today for Football at 4. As the Eagles win, it was Jalen Hurts getting the win. But was it just Jalen Hurts? Of course not. There was a lot to get into, and we will do it now. On today's edition of Football at 4, Andrew DiCecco here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, and he joins us right now. Andrew, what's going on, pal?
Mike, Hunter, how you guys doing today?
All is good. It feels a little different after a W on a Monday than these last couple of weeks of slop that we saw. And let's start with, we saw a lot of slop. What was different yesterday?
Well, Jalen Hurts, first and foremost, gave the offense a shot in the arm. I don't think there's no denying that. But what I saw from Jalen, we saw some design runs for Jalen. You saw a good mix of 11 and 12 personnel, the quick passing game, a quarterback who got rid of the football quickly if his first read wasn't there. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot. They leaned on the running game with Miles Sanders, and they got Jalen Hurts, obviously, creating, they both went over the 100-yard rushing mark. It was just a good balance on offense. And the energy that Jalen Hurts brought to the offense really resonated throughout the whole team. And what you saw was the Eagles playing complementary football, and everything kind of came together, and they were able to pull off that upset.
All right, so much has been made of the fact of, all right, did they have a different game plan? Did Doug Pederson call a different game? What was different about the offense? Sure, Hurts gave him a shot in the arm, but was it just like, hey, I threw out my old playbook and I just generated a new one? What was different about the game plan?
Well, they definitely played to Jalen's strengths, and they kept the offense very basic. And I see a lot of folks saying, well, they altered the game plan for Jalen Hurts, but they wouldn't do this for Carson Wentz. Well, Carson Wentz is a fifth-year veteran that's getting paid $128 million. So to dumb the offense down to the point of what you're asking a rookie to do is kind of concerning when you look at it in that light. But I mean, with Jalen, they got some design runs. They took advantage of his athleticism and got him outside the pocket. He was doing the quick passing game. They used the crossing routes. They kept it to short to intermediate. I mean, he had the one deep shot to Rager that was a little bit off the mark, but he made some nice throws. That 14-yarder Greg Ward before Miles Sanders' second touchdown was good. It was just a very rhythmic offense, and it wasn't anything too special. It was just more so them getting back to the basics and relying on the running game and getting Jalen Hurts out and taking advantage of his athleticism. And then with Jalen Hurts, he processes things quickly. He gets rid of the football when things aren't there. Doesn't put the offense in harm's way. And he completes those short passes with accuracy and gives those guys a chance to run after the catch.
The offensive line did not allow a sack. Is that ironic? Did they just play better? Or the way I see it is, when Jalen Hurts didn't see what he liked, he would take the field. And I thought that really helped the offensive line.
Yeah, I don't think that they've gotten enough credit, Hunter, for the performance that they had. I mean, Jack Driscoll shut down Cam Jordan. I believe Cam Jordan had one tackle the entire game. Trey Hendrickson on the other side. That was one of the biggest matchups, him versus Jordan McLeod. And Trey Hendrickson went into that game with 10.5 sacks, and you hadn't heard anything from him all game. I believe we ended with 3 tackles. That's an outstanding effort from those 2 tackles. And I also thought Nate Herbig had a good game. Just the offensive line as a whole, they held their blocks up fairly well. That 82-yarder from Miles Sanders, that was exceptionally blocked. And, some of it had to do with the legs of Jalen Hurts and being able to evade pressure, but a lot of it had to do with the quarterback who's not going to sit back there and for 5 seconds and hold the football and take these hits. He's going to unload the football. If it's not there, lift the fight another down. And I think that's what you saw. And I don't think there's any I don't think there's any surprise that recipe, when you look at the end of the game, that they didn't give up a single sack.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. You know, a lot of this offense, you know, throughout the last couple of weeks has not really been able to be utilized because of some of the things you're mentioning there. You know, hey, you're holding the ball too long, taking a lot of sacks. You know, when I look at this situation, and you can't do this with Hurts the whole time. He did not complete a very high percentage of passes. But what I talked about earlier in the show, Andrew, is his incompletions were not bad throws. They weren't inaccurate throws. They were good decisions. The reason his incompletions were there is because he made good decisions. That was what I found to be encouraging about what I saw from him. So when I see a low completion percentage from Wentz, I say, your completion percentage is low because you're an inaccurate thrower. When I see a low completion percentage from Hurts, it's not inaccuracies that I saw. It was more smart decisions in getting rid of the ball when there was no plays to be made. How much of that helped this offense?
It helped them tremendously because it allowed them to keep rhythm. It took they were able to sustain drives and take any momentum that the Saints had when they did have some. You know, Jalen Hurts is not putting the ball in harm's way. If he's not going to sit back there, if there's an opportunity for him to pick up yards on the ground with his legs, he did that. Now, is that going to be sustainable long term for him to carry the ball as many times as he did to take these hits? No, but, you know, if we're talking about a guy's first NFL start going into this week, he only plays 59 snaps, 15 throws. I mean, I thought that he handled himself very well, and you really saw the poise and the composure from Hurts that you saw in college. And I mean, like you said, he didn't, you know, his incompletions, they were smart throws. They were good incompletions. They weren't a product of inaccuracy and erratic throws. And I think that's encouraging to see.
Miles Sanders can clearly go the distance when he gets that home run hit. And I look at what happened yesterday because it wasn't as if he was tearing it up prior. I just hope that Doug Pederson can realize, you know what, if Miles Sanders has 7 carries for 14 yards, he has the ability to just go off on one run. So do you think this is a scenario now where we've seen it a handful of times, regardless of what Miles Sanders has done, you got to keep pounding the rock because all it takes is one play. Do you think Doug Pederson now realizes this more than he did before?
Yeah, you know, and when he broke that big one, man, I thought of all the times that we'd be talking every week about they got to get back to using Miles Sanders. Why are they not utilizing him in the passing game? He's one of their most explosive weapons, yet they're not using him. Yeah, Hunter, and I've written about that in the past. It's like, look, there might be times where he gets 2 or 3 yards at a time. I mean, he may go 7 carries for 14 yards, but that explosiveness that he has, the big playability, that home run threat, that's always there. And there's always that. All it needs to be is somewhat slightly blocked up, and he's going to find the crease, and he can run the daylight. That's the type of player that he is. He's an elite running back that's been kind of held back by the inadequacies of the offense. And what you saw was, yes, he found a crease. It was very well blocked up, and he was able to, you know, turn that into an explosive 82-yard play that really completely turned the tides of that game. And yeah, they need to continue to rely on Miles Sanders. Too often they get away from him after the first series once things start to sputter and they fall behind, and they forget that they have, you know, this playmaker in their backfield, and they go to the aerial attack and they don't yield much success. So I think that is a recipe for success in these next 3 games.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we're just kicking dirt all over Wentz, because there was a time where he was the guy that gave you explosion in the offense and gave you big plays and all the things that we're talking about now. So what did we learn? What have we learned about some of Wentz's struggles? Or, like, you know, did you watch that game yesterday and find out more about what has been wrong with Wentz and the offense? I mean, was it more Wentz? Was it more Pederson? Was it a combination? Was it the offensive line? Because it seemed that we were constantly saying, well, it's a combination of all these things. Well, those things were the same yesterday, and it didn't look the same.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that had to do, Mike, with Jalen Hurts' ability to evade the pocket and get out there on the move, and his escapability to kind of, you know, make it life easier on the offensive line. I don't think that Carson Wentz made life easier for an offensive line that really was patchwork all season. You talk about 12 different lineups. You have to find ways to take a little bit off their plate and get rid of the football. Don't hold on to the ball and try to go for that big play when there's a 5 or 6 yard completion, and that's going to kind of keep the chains moving. I think too often he got too greedy or too just hell-bent on going for the big play when there was other plays there that the defense was allowing underneath. And those things tend to spiral, and that's why the offense couldn't really get anything going. And a lot of it wasn't on him. There was times where there just frankly weren't guys that were getting open down the field. And we still have to see that with Jalen Hurts, because I do think there's going to be big play shots down the field available with guys like Jalen Hargrave. But I mean, guys weren't getting open. There were some protection breakdowns, but there was also plays where Carson Wentz was a little indecisive and held on the ball too long. And then there was the blatant misfires on simple, basic throws, such as screen passes that or not delivering the football where guys were in position to run after the catch. It was just a lot of things that kind of that began to mount, and that's where they are where they are.
I understand that Jalen Hurts and the offense will be the storyline, but I personally believe the reason why they won this game was the defense. I thought that they were tremendous. Hargrave, Sweat, you name it. They were all over the place. And for them, I know it got iffy at the end when Rodney McLeod left and Darius Slay left, and they were really holding on by a thread. But what they did, 17-0 in the first half, I thought the defense deserved the game ball, if you will.
Yeah, they sure did, and I wrote about that for InsideTheBirds.com. You know, as well as Jalen Hurts did in his first start, and as much life as he gave to the offense, I think you need to look at what the defensive line did. That's where the team really cuts their teeth. That's where their investment is in the Jayvon Hargraves and the Fletcher Coxes and the Brandon Grahams. That's where their defense is predicated on. And yeah, their back end was decimated. There was a guy named Kevon Seymour playing corner. I mean, those guys could be back there next week. There's Marcus Epps playing safety because of the injury to Rodney McLeod, Kayvon Wallace. So the defensive line really needed to get home, or that thing could have got a little bit hairy there late in the game when he was throwing some of those deep shots. But I mean, you talk about Jayvon Hargrave starting to come into his own. He's really starting to round into form, and he in an attack style defense where he doesn't have to read and react like he did in Pittsburgh. And Fletcher Cox seems to be reinvigorated. And I thought Brandon Graham has been the constant all season long. He's been the guy that always gets the pressure or makes plays behind the line of scrimmage. Ryan Ramczyk from the Saints is one of the best tackles in football. He kept him at bay, but I thought that Josh Sweat did a fantastic job against Teron Armstead. He couldn't handle his length or his bend or his speed and athleticism. Josh Sweat's a guy who was really, really ascended in this, and I guess this is his third season. And I mean, in a rotational role, it was a collective effort. But the Eagles, this is what they pay these guys for. They really needed those guys to deliver, and they did yesterday.
Yeah, I want to get your opinion on some of the because Rodney McLeod out for the season with the torn ACL, how big of a loss that is, and how do they replace him? Who are some of the options that are here now that could step into that McLeod role? And you might think that McLeod could be gone for most of next year too.
Yeah, Mike, Rodney McLeod is a player that he's always been viewed as the sidekick to Malcolm Jenkins, or the back, taking second fiddle to Darius Slay. And he's been here 5 years. He's been a very consistent player, arguably one of the team's biggest unsung heroes. He's a very sharp football IQ. He's always around the football. He gets guys lined up. He is pretty much the glue to that defense now that Malcolm hasn't been there. And losing him is big. The numbers may not support that, but Rodney is a very steady veteran, and he provides stability on the back end. Now, what you're going to see here is a lot of young players. But, a few weeks ago, they released Will Parks, he played 81% of the snap for Denver yesterday, who also was suffering a rash of injuries. But they could use a guy like that right now, but they got rid of him because they said that they wanted to play the young guys. Well, now is the time where they're going to play some of these young guys, and I assume the first crack will be Marcus Epps, who played 35 snaps yesterday, and Kayvon Wallace played, I believe, 28. So those guys, they're getting worked into the back end. And if I'm the Eagles, I really want to take a look at Kayvon Wallace in particular, the fourth-round pick, to see where he is, because you really may need to add to the safety position in the draft if he's not quite where you want him to be. But they like him or not, the Eagles really like Marcus Epps, and you're going to see you're going to see kind of a platoon between the two guys. I think Wallace is a better all-around player. I think Epps is more of a in-the-box player who can defend the run a little bit better, but not quite as effective on the back end. But you're going to see these two guys down the stretch here, and you're also going to see a little bit of Braylon Arnold mixed in there.
What do you think about the linebacker play? He actually had an interception from Duke Riley and Alex Singleton as well. Not an interception for him, but those two specifically. How do you think they played?
Yeah, it's a collective team effort when you're saying the linebackers are even contributing to the win. I mean, Duke Riley had a phenomenal game. He really did. He was everywhere. He was everywhere on the defense. He was flowing sideline to sideline, swarming to the football. He was even active on the onside kick. He was just. I thought him and Singleton, it was a good tandem because both players they both play with such tenacity and football IQ, and they have this downhill mentality. Obviously, Duke Riley is very much smaller in comparison to Singleton, but I really like the way that Duke Riley plays the game. He's always on the attack, and I thought that having him step in for an injured T.J. Edwards, you really needed somebody else to help Alex Singleton, and I thought he did that, and he stepped up in a big way. And the Eagles likely don't win that game if it wasn't for his interception, which was another play that turned the tides when things were starting to look a little precarious.
When you look at Josh Sweat, for the people out, he had 2 sacks yesterday. He has the strip sack. I mean, he had 6.5 sacks. He's been making plays. What is the reason, and is it fair that he does not essentially play the full brigade of snaps? I think he's about 55% of the snaps, right?
Yes, he is. And I believe yesterday he only played, it might have been around 30. He played 25 snaps. I know that. But he's someone that he's always going to be a rotational player, Mike. And the reason why I say that is he suffered a very serious knee injury in high school, and he's just had a rash of injuries throughout his career. And you want a guy like that to always stay fresh, and you wonder if he's going to be as effective when you ask him to take on a larger role on defense, or is he going to wear down and not have that burst off the line? The reason why I think he's so effective is because, one, he's an athletic freak. He's their best overall pass rusher that they have, but they're able to always keep him fresh, and he's able to come out with that burst and that quick first step off the line. He has an 81-inch wingspan. He's just an athletic specimen, and he's able to use all of his ability when he's in there because he's not being asked to be out there like every snap like Brandon Graham. And I think that they have a good mix there with him and Barnett. Barnett he shows flashes. He hasn't been as consistent, but Josh Sweat is a player that Jeff Mosher mentioned that the Eagles might want to consider signing to an extension, because of what he brings.
More cap problems giving these guys these early extensions.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at what he would probably warrant, I think that it would be a bargain considering what he brings to the table, and they don't have a wealth of young pass rushers. When you look at it, you don't know what's going to happen with Derek Barnett, and Brandon Graham's, I believe, 32 years old, and Vinny Curry's up there, and Josh Sweat's really the one piece that you have to build around. So I think that would be a wise investment.
What did you think of Nickel Roby-Coleman's play last night?
Man, I got this one wrong, man. I remember when we were talking back in May, I had him. I touted him as being a top 5 nickel in football, and I think a lot of people did, and that was considered to be a bargain signing. And I really liked the physicality and the scrappiness and his match and mirror technique from the inside, and we just haven't seen that. His tackling effort has been extremely shoddy, and when he's been asked to kick out to the outside, he's been exposed there as well. I don't know where you go from here with him. I think ultimately he won't be here next year, and I think you're going to see Avonte Maddox kick into that role because Nickel Roby-Coleman's actually been a liability. He's hurt the team more than he's helped.
Yeah, and Avonte Maddox being out too. I mean, I guess he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. You're going to start to see. I don't know who they're going to put in that secondary for the Arizona game, right? I mean, who are options to take his spot? What's that secondary look like on Sunday?
Oh man, I was thinking about that today. If depending on Slade's availability, it could get really ugly with DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk and the weapons that they have. And I mean, it's going to be someone like a Kevon Seymour who gave up that touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders. He played in yesterday was his 32nd game in the NFL. He has some experience. Braylon Arnold can play some nickel. He's played some safety and corner at Baylor. He was out this week with a hamstring, but there's that option to have him. The Eagles really like him. Jalen Mills may be asked to play some corner. depending on how dire the situation is as the week progresses. Other than that, it's extremely barren, the cupboard. So, I mean, I don't know what many options that they have at this stage in the season.
I want to get your thoughts on special teams, and not so much Jake Elliott, even though he missed a 22-yarder, but what's going on with this punt return game? Greg Ward, he's not even catching it, and Jalen Reagor had that explosive play a couple weeks ago, and you haven't seen him since. So what are they doing with that?
Yeah, and listen, I've been a big proponent for Greg Ward as a wide receiver, and he's a nice story, but as a punt returner, Hunter, to me, he's almost too safe. He's become the Reno Mile, if you guys can remember that in the early 2000s, where he was sure-handed. He was going to be back there, and he's always going to, field the football or fair catch it or maybe give you 5 yards after return. But he didn't offer much in terms of explosive plays. And now we're seeing some gaffes, some poor decision-making in the return game, and I think you have to at least look at getting Jalen Reagor back there. I think Jalen Reagor right now, I think there's a little bit of hesitancy because he hasn't, kind of like when they used Deshaun Jackson, in an emergency situation when you really need to spark. But I think now is the time to really put him back there and allow him to flip field position, because you're not going to get that from Greg Ward. And I know that Reagor may not be the most sure-handed. I know there may be a little bit of that. That's what might be causing the hesitancy. I mean, even on the one that he returned, he dropped the football, picked it up like Deshaun did in the Miracle of the Meadowlands. But I think right now you have to go to him because eventually the costly, it's going to be costly and cost them one of these games in a close situation.
By the way, we didn't really touch on the impact Hargrave had either. I mean, and they're starting to. I don't know. He did not start this year healthy. He was a little bit of a disappointment, but you're starting to see what he brings to the defense.
Yeah, and like I said, he's finally getting. I think it takes a while for guys to get coming from different systems to get adjusted to a new defense. And in this case, he's going from a read and react, where he's playing tentative with the Steelers, and he's obviously Jim Schwartz is an attack-minded defensive coordinator, and that's what he's on the attack all the time, going after the quarterback. And he was hurt early in the season, so I think that cost him a little bit of progress. But now he's starting to round into form. He's exactly he's playing as advertised. What you invested in him to be that disruptive interior lineman opposite Fletcher Cox, who really hasn't had a competent running mate for the last few seasons because Tim Jernigan frankly didn't work out. And I think what you're seeing is, I mean, he has 3.5 sacks over the past 5 games, and I believe 10 combined quarterback hits and pressures. That's impressive. And he's starting to catch fire late in the season at the right time, and that's a scary tackle combination, Mike. And the Eagles really need to get that interior pressure going against a guy like Kyler Murray. You saw what it did to Taysom Hill. It pushed the pocket into his lap, and he wasn't able to step up in the pocket, and it kind of it really limited his game. And that's solely tied to what Jayvon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox were able to do.
He's Andrew DiCecco, and, of course, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Andrew, talk to you soon.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
All right, there he goes. And Football at 4 is brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your deposit up to $250.